Hey everyone, thank you for joining tonight's presentation with an update on the San Diego real estate market and many other topics that we're going to discuss this evening. As you've probably seen, there have been a lot of updates in the headlines about the recent National Association of Realtors lawsuit. So we'll talk about that towards the end of tonight's presentation after we cover the latest economic trends that we've seen. If you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat or the Q&A. And I will address all questions at the end of tonight's presentation. With that, let's get into what we're going to cover this evening. We'll first start out, as I mentioned, with the latest real estate market data and forecast. We'll show you what's happened in the last couple of months, what's occurring today, and what is likely to occur in the coming months. Then we'll talk a little bit about some down payment assistance programs and other programs that are helping buyers specifically in today's market. And last but not least, we'll close it out by discussing the recent headlines regarding the National Association of Realtors lawsuit and proposed settlement that has been splashing all over in the headlines lately. We should be able to get through everything in about 60 minutes. I'll spend about 20 or so minutes per topic. And as I mentioned, I'll answer all Q&A at the end that you put in the chat or the Q&A. With that said, quick background on myself. I recognize some of the names on, and some of you are probably new to my webinars, but my name is Patrick Kappel. I'm the team leader of the Kappel Realty Group here in San Diego. We are one of the top performing teams, not just locally in San Diego, but also across the United States. We typically sell about 10 million a year, and actually just this last week, our team crossed the $500 million threshold with over $500 million in real estate transactions beneath our belts, letting you know that we are boots on the ground type of agents working in the field every day. And we have a good pulse of what's going on in the market. You can see the education there, though. I always say, an education is worth sharing, and that's why I do these real estate webinars. I have a Master's of Science degree from the University of San Diego, an MBA with a focus in finance and real estate from UCLA. Before all that, the Naval Academy is where I got my undergrad. And along with working in the business, along with having master's degrees in real estate, I am just like you. I'm a consumer in the business. My wife and I have been buying real estate for over 15 years. In fact, I started out as a real estate investor myself while I was in the Navy, long before I became a real estate agent. And through that time, while serving in the military, we built up a portfolio of 8 properties. I became a board member of the Southern California Rental Housing Association, and I actually still do serve to this day in the military as a lieutenant commander in the Navy Reserves. So quick background on myself and my team. I can assure you, when you work with my team and I, you are working with some of the top agents in the business. Recently at an award ceremony, every single member on this team in front of you that was at that award ceremony won an award. And it's really just a bunch of superstars that I am extremely proud of. And last but not least, before we dive into data, I'd like to give you access to our YouTube channel, where tonight's presentation will be uploaded. So if you want to rewatch it, or if you know anyone else that could benefit from what we're about to cover, just send them to our YouTube channel. You can find it by scanning that QR code. And along with tonight's webinar, you'll find plenty of other real estate educational webinars, including how to invest in real estate, how to cash flow $100,000 a year, how to house hack, and also how to use some of the down payment assistance programs that we have here in San Diego and throughout the county. So maybe if you have children that are looking to buy their first home, send them to these webinars. Or if you yourself are looking to invest in real estate, check out the other webinars we have on our YouTube channel. Also, you can contact me at any time. I'm pretty accessible. The best way to get a hold of me is email at patrick.kappel@compass.com. I personally answer all my emails myself. And with that, one last reminder, any questions you have, I love your questions, type them in the Q&A and I'll make sure they get answered at the end. I saw this pictograph a few weeks ago, and I really like it because I realize this is really true, folks. Most real estate agents know what is happening in the market. Good agents understand what is happening. Great agents can explain what's happening. So that's my goal tonight, is to explain what's going on today in the real estate market. It's quite easy to do because unlike most people that say they don't have a real estate crystal ball, that's not true. We all have a crystal ball, and it's called data and analytics. If you look at the data, you can easily make predictions, which won't be right 100% of the time. But if you make predictions off data, you'll be more right than you are wrong, which means you'll win. So let's talk about what is happening. Home prices are continuing to go up. In fact, faster in San Diego than just about anywhere else in the globe. So let's understand the why. It's a lack of supply relative to our demand in San Diego. And now I'd like to spend the next 55 minutes or so giving you the explanation. When I give you the explanation, we're going to talk a bit about economics. We're going to talk a bit about real estate. And what I will also put in front of you is a little bit of history. Because as you learned in high school and maybe college, history is the best education we can get about what's happening now and in the future. So let's take a quick look at a few slides from a presentation that I gave in person to an audience of over 100 people last month back in February. And we're going to correlate these slides that I gave a month ago to what is going on now. And I'm going to use this analogy, a canary in a coal mine. Many of you know what this means. Many of you have heard this term. For those of you who haven't, what is a canary in a coal mine? Well, back in the past, when coal miners would work deep down underground, they would know there's a lack of oxygen when the canary died. And when the canary died, it's time to get out of that coal mine, or time to take action, maybe pump more air down. And there was a canary in the coal mine incident that happened in just the last month or two in real estate, and it never really made headlines. The funny thing is, a lot of the stuff that shouldn't make headlines does, and a lot of stuff that should make headlines doesn't. So there's something that happened in San Diego real estate in January that had never happened before in human history in San Diego real estate history. So we're going to talk about that. I put a blog out about it. I put it in my newsletter. Many of you probably get my newsletter. For those who don't, I'm not going to read through all this because we're about to get in the numbers. But the title of the newsletter that came out on February 6th was "Buckle Up. This San Diego real estate car has plenty of gas and no brakes." So what did I mean by that? What I meant by that is we are about to see more price appreciation in San Diego than we have ever seen before in history. And that's a bold statement. So what data do I have to back up that statement? Let's take a look. Let's look all the way back at 2022. As we were entering 2022, the previous month, December of 2021, the median home price in San Diego County was $850,000. Now, historically, home prices go down in December, January, February. Why do home prices go down December, January, February? It's seasonal. It's because everyone's celebrating the holidays. Few people are moving, and very few people are shopping for homes during December and January. So demand goes way down. And I'll say it a million times tonight, the price of everything in life comes down to supply and demand. And during the holidays of December, demand goes down, so prices go down. Very few times do we see prices go up December to January. And when prices during those very few instances do go up from December to January, they usually go up very nominal, 1% or less. Well, in 2022, for the first time in human history, we saw home prices go up a huge amount from December to January. Now, 850,000 to 880 may not seem huge, 30,000, but let's put it in a percentage. That is a 3.53% increase in just 1 month, in 30 days. And in fact, it was during the 30 days when home prices usually fall. Put this in perspective when you think that nationally, home prices usually only go up about 3.5% a year. Now, San Diego being a Southern California coastal market, our real estate values over the last half a century historically go up about 6% per year, year over year for 50 years. This is why I've always been bullish on San Diego. San Diego, unlike most other real estate markets, is a real estate market that can truly make you wealthy because we usually appreciate it 2 times the rate as the rest of the nation. But this thing that happened in 2022 was unprecedented. We had never seen home prices go up 3.5% from December to January until we saw it in 2022. Why was this important? From January to April of 2022, we saw home prices go up further and reach $1 million, all-time historical high. That represented a 13.6% increase in just 90 days. Unprecedented. So why am I talking about 2022? Because today, here we are sitting in 2024. Because 2024 has some similarities to 2022, but one difference. The only thing in 2022 that slowed down the price escalation after 13.6% increase in 90 days, the only thing that slowed it down was interest rates. You might recall that before April of 2022, interest rates were super low, 2-3%. And then it was in April of 2022 that the Federal Reserve began increasing interest rates, and thus mortgage rates started going up. And mortgage rates going up caused home prices to go down a little bit, not a ton, but enough to slow down the rapid acceleration we saw. We don't have these breaks anymore. Interest rates are not going to go up further. We're already in the high sixes, low sevens. If interest rates go in any direction, you and I both know that direction is going to be down throughout the course of this year. So imagine 2022, we didn't have any breaks. Imagine if interest rates didn't go up in 2022, prices would have really taken off. So now let's look at what's happening in 2024. So here we are in 2024. And in December, just this last December 2023, we saw the median home price at $942,000. What happened December to January? And remember, typically home prices go down December to January, but this last December to January, we saw home prices go up from 942 to 976. What percent increase did this represent? 3.56. That was a new record high for price appreciation in San Diego between a December and a January 30-day period. So we now again have seen something that has never happened in human history, a 3.56% increase. That is a canary in the coal mine type of moment, giving us an indication, a foreshadowing, if you will, of what is in store for the rest of this year. Now, if like in 2022, when we also saw a similar increase, December to January, if we also go up over the next 90 days from January to April, where would pricing be? 1.109 million. Guys, put this in perspective that if what happened December to January, we only have one other historical example. We see 13.6% increases from January to April. By this April, the end of next month, median home prices in San Diego County could be $1.1 million, a record we've never seen. The highest we've ever seen home prices in San Diego was last August when the median sales price was 1.015. Well, guess what? That record just got broken last month. Remember, these slides you're looking at, I gave about 30 days ago. A lot has happened in the last 30 days. So let's take a look at what happened in the last 30 days. In February of 2024, just last month, we hit a new record high in San Diego County at $1.029 million for a single family detached home, surpassing that previous record that you see right here, set in August of 1.015. Over $1 million, that's a lot of money. And if you're a first-time home buyer, comment condos are cheaper. The median price of a condo right now is closer in the $600,000 range. But look at what happened from January to February. In just the last month-over-month period, January to February, we saw a 5.4% increase in home values, which means we're already over 1/3 of the way there to 1.1 million in April. Because remember, the last time we saw a 3.5 something increase, December to January, the next 90 days, we saw 13.6. My crystal ball is data, guys. I am not a genie and I am not a fortune teller, but I'm an economist looking at data every day. And if the data is painting a picture for us, that picture is showing that we better buckle up for some of the most appreciation we have ever seen in San Diego history. Now, I mentioned to anyone who might be buying a condo, which in San Diego is a first-time home buyer, for attached homes, townhomes and condos, the price is significantly less, with the median condo value being at $655,000. A condo is a great first-time home for a first-time home buyer. In fact, my first home I bought in San Diego was a condo. The second home I bought in San Diego was a condo. It wasn't until my third home that I purchased later in life in my 30s where I bought a single family home. So a lot of times we see starter home equals a condo. Now you'll notice condos are not at record highs right now, yet single family homes really skyrocketed up to record highs. Why is that? It's because in San Diego, almost the majority of new homes being built are attached. They're condos and they're townhomes. So we're adding more of that supply, but we're not adding that many more detached homes. So what can this tell you? What can you extrapolate from that information? More likely than not, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, single family homes will appreciate more than condos and townhomes. That should be no surprise because we're not building many single family homes, we're building condos. It doesn't make a condo a bad investment. In fact, it makes it a great investment. It just tells you a single family home will likely appreciate a little bit more. So what's going on with mortgage rates and how do they tie into all of this, folks? And how are they going to, if anything, all but ensure home prices skyrocket this year? Well, you can see the 30-year fixed mortgage rate going back to 2020 year. We're at the highest levels in this last year that we had seen in over 20 years, 2 decades, with mortgage rates going over 7%. And right now you can see mortgage rates are kind of dancing around in the high 6th percentile range, really just below 7%. Well, I want you to consider this. You would think that with the high mortgage interest rates we have, home values would go down, but that has not been the case. And that has not been the case because of what I have been saying for years. We do not have an interest rate problem. We have an inventory problem. We simply do not have enough housing. In fact, when you look at real estate values laid on top of mortgage rates, the top graph is showing you real estate values in San Diego County going back to 2021. The bottom graph is showing you interest rates going back to 2021. So these graphs are really lined up. And you can see that when interest rates, the bottom graph, first went up quickly from 2022 to the end of that year, we saw real estate values take a bit of a slump as buyers adjusted to the new rates. And then as the years went on, we saw values keep on going up. Real estate values kept on going up, even with interest rates hitting new all-time highs in the last 20 years of nearly 8%. This tells us that higher interest rates do not lower home prices, okay? And in fact, it does tell us that if interest rates didn't go up, we might have seen home prices accelerate faster. But high interest rates don't cause them to drop and stay down. What will happen though, as interest rates continue to go down? Well, you can see here that towards the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, we did see interest rates start to come down. And look what happened to home values up here in the top right. As interest rates continue to drop throughout this year and next year, you can be certain that home prices will skyrocket. Why is this important for you to know? If you're a buyer, you should buy now. The longer you wait to buy, the more you're going to pay. You can always refinance your interest rate. When you buy a house, you lock in a 30-year mortgage interest rate. But after you buy that house into the future, you can refinance your mortgage as many times as you want, and you can refinance it into a lower interest rates as rates go down. But if you wait to buy your house and you think you're going to wait for interest rates to go down, you're not helping yourself and you're not lowering your mortgage payment. Because while you might lock in a lower interest rate up front, you will also lock in a higher purchase price. And while you can refinance your mortgage interest rate, you can never refinance your purchase price. That is etched in stone forever. So if you wait, you will pay more as interest rates go down, home prices go up, more and more buyers rush into the market. So what are the forecasts for home prices? For the reason I just mentioned, and many other reasons, including the lack of supply relative to demand, the majority of economists are projecting this year, next year, and all the way through 2026, homes will appreciate. In fact, you can see going through 2026, well over 90% of economists, the majority, are predicting appreciation in the coming years. So you might be asking yourself, why are real estate values in San Diego going up so much? You keep hearing news articles in the media saying housing is unaffordable. In fact, I read a recent article from a local San Diego news station that said the median home buyer needs to make about $246,000. That is one of the most misleading news articles I've ever seen. The majority of home buyers do not make $250,000. That article assumes that you're buying the median price home, $1 million. Most home buyers don't buy $1 million homes, certainly not as their first home. They buy a $500,000, a $600,000, a $700,000 home or condo. And they're usually going to be in dual household incomes or using a down payment assistance program, which we'll talk about later. But I would say your typical San Diego buyer makes anywhere from around $100,000 on up, maybe a little bit less if they're in a two household income. But why are values going up? Even with high interest rates, comes down to supply. It's the lack of supply. And if demand goes up faster than supply, it doesn't matter what the product is. In this case, a product is real estate, prices will go up. And you can see by the chart in front of you that this problem, it's not new. It didn't happen yesterday. It's been a long time coming. The lack of supply has been 10 to 15 years of builders underbuilding. And why have they been underbuilding? You tie it back to the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and a lot of home builders got burned in the Great Recession that happened now almost 15 years ago. Those builders didn't come back the way they were before. So we just have not built enough housing in the United States of America. And you can see at the end of last year, we as a country were at all-time record lows of existing home inventory. Now, if that weren't bad enough, combine the low supply side of this equation with the high demand side of the equation. You see, the largest generation we have right now is millennials, followed right behind them, Gen Z. And your typical first-time homebuyer is in their early to mid 30s. So right now, millennials are in their mid 30s, hitting first-time homebuyer age, and they're the biggest generation we have had in decades. And we did not build enough housing for them. And right on the heels of millennials, we have Gen Zers, an even bigger generation. We don't have enough housing for them. So you're hitting the crossroads of the least amount of supply we have ever added to the United States in a 10-year period, intersecting with the largest crossroad of demand. That is going to all but ensure home prices skyrocket. San Diego, for those of you who do buy a home, it's going to be one of the greatest investments of your life. There's many articles and economists coming out saying this. San Diego has been ranked as one of the top 5 markets in the United States for real estate this year. You can see here that recent article that looked at all the top markets that are going to have some of the highest sales growth fall in Southern California, including Oxnard, San Diego, Riverside, Bakersfield, and LA, but San Diego leading the pack in almost every category. And why is that? This article from John Burns, which is one of the most well-respected real estate research analyst companies in the nation, they sent this email out to every real estate agent and professional that subscribes to them in the nation, received this article a day or two ago, stating that Orange County and San Diego will continue to outshine expectations. And OC and San Diego are currently the strongest US housing markets in the entire United States. And they expect it to remain that way throughout 2024 for 4 main reasons. The biggest one being supply constraints. Remember, supply and demand, that's what it all comes down to. And we just don't have anywhere else to really build broad development in San Diego. The land is gone. To the north, we have Camp Pendleton. To the east, we have the Cleveland National Forest. To the south, we have Mexico. And to the west, we have Pacific Ocean. We are out of places to build. Also, San Diego and Orange County have become the fastest growing biotech and just general tech hubs in the United States, ensuring that we have some of the highest paid jobs and a diverse array of employment sectors coming here. We also are one of the strongest rebound markets for international buyers. International buyers are coming into Southern California, including San Diego, like no other place. And last but not least, housing has become expensive just about anywhere in the US, making it harder to leave San Diego and go somewhere else to find a much cheaper market without having to sacrifice a huge part of quality of life that we enjoy here in San Diego. And what's going to come of interest rates in the next year? Projections are showing that the Fed funds rate will likely continue to fall throughout this year. The Fed's meeting here, but they're likely not going to do a rate drop because inflation came in this last week a little bit higher than expected. But most analysts are now expecting drops on the Fed funds rate to occur this summer. When the Fed funds rate goes down, that doesn't directly affect mortgages, but indirectly, it causes a lot of other investment vehicles, including the 10-year treasury, to go down. And when the 10-year treasury goes down, the 30-year mortgage follows in kind and usually goes down as well. So what can you expect by year's end? As we look at December, January, going out nearly 12 months, we see interest rates likely down 1%. And by the end of 2025, perhaps a full 1.5% to 2% drop. Don't expect interest rates really to drop more than 2% over the next 2 years, but you can expect them to drop anywhere between 0.5 to 1% this year, and again, 0.5 to 1% next year. And again, though, everything comes down to supply and demand, and we don't have enough supply. That's why you're seeing home prices continue to go up, even at the prices you're seeing today. And reduce it to the ridiculous, folks. Imagine there was only one home for sale. What would it sell for? Billions of dollars. Now, there's a lot more than one home for sale, but it puts into perspective that when you make the supply constrained enough, prices can go to the moon. So what are some of the bottom line things that as a buyer or seller you need to know? Number one, there is not a real estate crash on the horizon. Number two, there's not enough real estate supply in San Diego or really in the nation. So over the long term, real estate prices will keep going up. Anyone who has told you in the last 5 to 10 years that there was a crash coming just on the horizon, don't listen to that person. Probably don't even be friends with them because they're telling you lies or just making things up, not knowing that they're lying. Rents will keep going up though. For anyone out there who's a renter, buckle up. I'm going to show you some slides to indicate just how much rents are going up. Now is a good time to buy real estate so you can avoid those increases in rents and take advantage of the increasing market that we see here in San Diego. So let's take a look at some of the Some of the headlines that did pop out over the last year. First one came from the Los Angeles Times, and this one's actually very accurate. There's only three primary solutions to our housing crisis. One, build more housing. Two, build more housing. And three, build more housing. The Union Tribune came out last year and said that San Diego home prices are rising second fastest in the United States. And with those price increases, we saw San Diego County properties hit a new record last year, and again, a new record last month. But as of last year, all San Diego real estate was worth almost $1 trillion. There's also another big misconception I hear out there. A lot of folks think, well, everyone's leaving California and moving to the Midwest or Texas. That's simply not true. Primarily, the people leaving California are the ones who cannot afford California. And the people that can't afford California, they don't affect California real estate values anyway. The truth is, most people leaving California are leaving from Northern California, while Southern California is gaining people. We can see here that in the last year, almost 500,000 moved to California. And the misconception everyone's moving to Texas, actually, a lot of folks from Texas are moving to California. There's when we look at the demographic studies, and the government census can track this, tax returns can track this. If a citizen moves out of Texas to another state, the number one state they move to is California. And who from Texas and every other state is moving to California? The highly educated, highly compensated people working in tech and biotech making over six figures. And it's these people, ironically, moving to us from the Midwest in high paying jobs that are helping lead to an increase in home prices. As we see in this recent San Diego Fox article, most people from Texas moving to California was even chronicled in the Houston Chronicle as a news article in the state of Texas. And why are they moving here? Because our salary is much higher than the average salary in Texas. In fact, it's almost 50% higher. In Texas, the average salary is about $57,000. In California, the average salary is $73,000, and which is about 50% higher, and it's even higher here in Southern California. A lot of homeowners and folks moving to San Diego are also realizing that, as I mentioned earlier, there is nothing that can build your wealth faster and greater over the long run than real estate. And because of that, and because of what's happened in the last few years, and because real estate's becoming more and more of a rarity, we are seeing homeowners' net worth increase rapidly relative to renters. In fact, renters' net worth has hardly changed at all over the last decade plus, while homeowners have experienced a huge growth in their net worth, increasing that wealth gap between the renters and the homeowners. If you want to ensure that to stay at the bottom, keep being a renter. But I'm telling you, anyone, even most people that don't think they can afford housing, can afford to buy a house. We've worked with so many clients that didn't think they could. And after we help them get free down payment assistance money and whatnot, we give them keys usually within 60 days. Why else are we seeing migration into California and specifically into San Diego? Unemployment. Unemployment is at near record lows. And some of the biggest drivers in employment right now are some of also our biggest sectors in San Diego: biotech and government. Also, the Department of Defense. Department of Defense is a growing industry, a growing budget, especially because of what's going on in the Middle East and Eastern Europe right now. But with this all-time record low of unemployment, and there's nothing on the horizon showing us that's going to go up much anytime soon, home prices will likely stay elevated. So what could happen to home prices as interest rates fall? Well, I'm showing you here very likely scenario of what could play out over the next 2 years. And right now, like I said, we're pretty close to 7% interest rates. And we could drop to 2.5% over the next 2 years. A person who wants a $4,000 a month mortgage. And folks, when people apply for a mortgage, the dollar amount's important, but usually buyers tell us, I want this specific mortgage amount. So anyone who wants a $4,000 a month mortgage today with principal and interest, not including taxes and insurance, they can afford about a $750,000 house. Now, if interest rates drop 2.5% over the next 2 years, that same person that wants a $4,000 a month mortgage can now afford $1 million house. Does that mean all of a sudden they can get a bigger, better house? No. That means you have more people chasing the same house, and that pushes up real estate values. And this is why, as you see at the bottom of this slide, a 2.5% drop over the next couple of years could very realistically cause home values to go up by another 33%. Another reason why I'm saying the longer you wait, the more you pay. But the sooner you buy, the more equity you build over time. So when folks ask me, what should I do? Wait to buy or buy and then wait? Of course, my answer is buy now while real estate prices are low compared to what they could be in the future. And to help folks buy now with nearly 7% interest rates, there's two amazing programs that buyers can take advantage of. Or if a seller wants to sell for top dollar, they can have their listing agent advertise these programs to potential buyers. One of them is a 2-1 buy down program where you can buy down your interest rate for 2 years, knowing that you'll probably be able to refinance in the next year or two. And the other is down payment assistant programs. Some folks will say, though, well, isn't renting cheaper than owning? Because the monthly payment on renting might look a little bit cheaper than owning. New studies have come out showing that owning beats renting as long as home prices rise by 3.15% per year. And this happens 70% of the time. And as I mentioned in San Diego, if you go back over a 50-year period, we rise 6% year over year on average, making San Diego real estate an even safer investment than most national real estate. Also, this other recent article by Aziz Sundara, he is a real estate journalist that really gets into the data of it all, showed that as long as you own for at least 3 to 4 years, it is more expensive to rent over that 4-year period. And the longer you live, either the longer you live in a place, the more of a gap you're going to lose on renting versus owning. Additionally, as I mentioned, home prices are also typically we're going to see them go up faster than inflation. We saw more inflation than we've seen in my lifetime in the last couple of years. But to ensure inflation doesn't beat you next time, housing is one of your best hedges against inflation. With us seeing it typically every decade, home prices going up faster than what we see inflation go up. In fact, I put this little chart together showing that if someone had $50,000 and they wanted to invest it in a piece of real estate, 5% down on $1 million property, or invest it in the stock market and get a heck of a good return at 12%. Well, if they use that $50,000 and buy $1 million home, and that home goes up 6% year over 30 years, that $50,000 turns into almost $6 million. Whereas that same $50,000 in the stock market doing 12%, which is more than the average, it becomes only 1.5 million, ensuring that your net worth grows almost 4 times greater by being invested in that San Diego property over the long term. Now, for renters get almost a double whammy punch to the eye because not only do they miss out on the benefits of appreciation of home ownership, but rents historically go up faster than inflation, giving you that double whammy. So what are we seeing exactly in San Diego? What are the drivers? I mentioned it already. Government spending, Department of Defense, but also venture capital spending. From 2010 to 2021, we saw venture capital spending in San Diego grow over 10x, from an average of usually less than $1 billion to almost $10 billion VC money coming in the San Diego region in 2021. And that venture capital money and biotech money is continuing to come into the San Diego region more than anywhere else in the United States. In fact, in front of you, you see the largest metropolitans in the US that have had the most growth in venture capital investment. And San Diego, again, ranks number 1. And we see it through things like the $1.6 billion IQHQ San Diego, research and development district that is being built right downtown across from the USS Midway. We also see it through studies like this one on LinkedIn, showing that again, San Diego ranked #1, no surprise, as being the city with the most growth in tech talent between 2019 and 2022. It's for these economic reasons that San Diego homeowners have become the least likely to sell homes at a loss and the most likely to make a fortune by just owning real estate. And beyond the headlines, when you get in the data, as we mentioned earlier, San Diego is one of the fastest growing populations over the last decade. Anywhere you see in this chart, mainly Southern California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida, anywhere you see in green, those are areas where populations are growing. In the pink and the purple, those are the areas where the populations are shrinking. But with this population growth, folks, nationally, we haven't built enough housing. And in San Diego, we certainly haven't built enough housing. We need to build about 21,000 plus units a year in San Diego just to meet our growing demand. Yet we're building less than half of that, just about 9,000 units a year. And we started building less housing, as you can see in the blue, at the same time that population and household growth began really taking off, correlating with the biotech boom here in San Diego on the far right of your screen. So what has this caused? This has caused an increase in home prices and an increase in rents. San Diego over the last 3 years has become one of the top 10 cities for rent growth, not just real estate values, but also rent growth. And because of that, San Diego has now surpassed San Francisco as the most expensive place to rent. Another reason renting is just wasting your money in a city like San Diego versus owning. Home ownership remains the #1 dream of most Americans, first, even ahead of being able to retire and have a good career and have a college degree. And when we survey millennials and Gen Z, the majority, over 95%, remember that pent up demand. It all comes down to supply and demand. We don't have the supply, but look at the demand side. Over 95% of millennials and Gen Z want to buy a house. Yet the #1 reason, emotional lifestyle. There's nothing like pride of ownership, and it's just a good financial and rational thing to do. However, when you look at Gen Zs, the #1 thing stopping them from buying right now is not having enough saved up for a down payment. And that's where these programs come in, guys. California likely has more down payment assistance programs. I call it free money because that's what it is, free money for buyers. We have more down payment assistance programs than probably just about any other state in America. And you can get some of this free money through two primary groups. The first being the San Diego Housing Commission, the second being the California Housing Finance Agency, CalHFA. Now, there's others out there, but these are the two primary ones. A good example, we just helped a client buy their first home. They didn't have the down payment, but we got them over $20,000 in free money to go towards their down payment. They bought a $600,000 condo, 3.5% down payment assistance, gave them $21,000 in free money. There's over 20 different down payment assistance programs for both San Diegans and Californians. Some of them are specific to San Diego, some of them specific to San Diego County, some of them specific to California. But no matter who you are, there's likely a down payment assistance program that works for you. The biggest one, though, and it's coming back here in 2024, is going to be the California Dream for All. This program is giving over $200 million to first-time homebuyers, up to $150,000 per buyer. Last year, we got our client, one of our clients got over $120,000. And combined last year, we got our clients almost $500,000 in free money down payments assistance. I'm not going to dive deep into these down payment programs tonight, because that's not the main focus of tonight's presentation. But if you do want to learn more about these down payment assistance programs and how you or one of your children or one of your friends can use these programs, check out that YouTube channel I gave you the QR code to, because I do have a 60-minute deep dive webinar that drills really deep into these down payment programs and how you can use them. What I want to spend the last 10 to 15 minutes doing, though, is answering your questions. And right before we get to those, let's talk about some of the recent headlines regarding the NAR, National Association of Realtors, and real estate agent commissions. There's been a lot of articles out there, a lot of headlines. And let me first say this, two things really. Number one, nothing has been finalized. A settlement agreement has been reached, but not approved between the plaintiffs and NAR on the plaintiffs out of Missouri, and they likely will not be approved for a matter of months. If they are approved by the court system, these changes will go in effect in the summer. Not today, not now, not last week, but in the summer, most likely in July. The second thing I want to say is that almost every article I have read about the lawsuit and the settlement has either been wrong at worst or misleading at best. And that's why I wanted to include a 10-minute segment on this, because almost everything you've probably read or heard in the news has been extremely misleading. So let's take a look at some of these articles, the headlines at least, that were misleading. The first one in the top left: could a major lawsuit against realtors mean lower home prices? I'll tell you the answer to that question right now is no. If you take away a 2.5% or a 3% commission to an agent, that's not going to lower home prices. Maybe the seller just keeps more money. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you why in a minute. But home prices aren't going to go down if you remove the real estate agent, because home prices, like the value of anything, the value of cars, the value of food, the value of a can of beer, the value of everything in life comes down to only two things: supply and demand, not commissions. Real estate values will not go down. Mark my word on that. I would bet any amount of money on that. Next, CNN, the 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtors Association agrees to the settlement. First of all, there never was a required 6% commission. Commissions generally fell in the 5 to 6% range. In San Diego, we typically would see 5%. And usually that 5% was split between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent to do the work to sell the house. Now, commissions were sometimes higher, they were sometimes lower, but I'll tell you this, the same thing my wife tells me all the time. She says, Patrick, in life, you get what you pay for. I used to drive to Las Vegas, now I fly. It costs me more, but it's a much more enjoyable experience. And usually I would see lower commissions. I would see agents doing lower level of service or more incompetent. Is a 5 or 6% commission going away? I don't think it will, and I'll show you why in a minute. Bottom left, realtor lawsuit settlement unburdens home sellers from heavy commissions. What now for buyers? I'll tell you the answer to that question. Sellers are likely, the majority of the time, going to still be paying the buyer's agent's commission. And I'll show you how in a minute. But that's not going to change. The way it's done is going to change, but what is done is not going to change. Bottom right, realtor group agrees to slash commissions in a major no realtor group agreed to slash commissions. No one has agreed for commissions to go down. Let me be very clear about what did happen. So I'm going to answer 3 questions for you that the headlines did not really do a great job at answering. The first one: how do commissions in the industry work? How have they worked for the last 10, 20 years? How are they working today? Then I'm going to let you know what happened. Then we're going to talk about how will commissions in the industry work in the future? How are they proposed to work starting in mid-July? Well, here's how they used to work. I'm really pulling the curtain back here, and this is stuff I didn't know before I got into real estate. When I was an officer in the Navy, I would buy investment property. I didn't know how it all worked. I just knew I wanted to work with an agent that I trusted and that I felt was competent. How they got paid, was, I guess, I didn't look too much into it. But now I worked in the industry, and I'll let you know exactly how it works. a seller would hire a listing broker to market the seller's home. Keyword market. The seller would offer that listing broker 5 to 6% to market the home. Notice I don't say a seller pays a listing broker to sell a home. The majority of the time, the seller's listing broker, well, they market the home, and hopefully they do a really good job at marketing the home so it sells for top dollar. Usually the agent who sells the home is a different agent. We call them the buyer's agent, and they represent the buyer, but let's be honest, they're the one selling the home. And for this reason, the listing agent who is being paid by the seller would usually offer any other broker out there in the world half of their payment. And it's called cooperation. That's why we call it cooperation agreement. And let's say I'm going to sell someone's home for 5%, and I'll say, thank you, I will sell your home for 5%. And if I can get other brokers to help me sell your home by them bringing a client, I'm going to give them half of my pay. I'm going to give them 2.5% of the 5%. Not many industries cooperate that much, but we always have, and we do to this day. Because effectively, that listing broker is given a third-party broker half the listing broker's commission. Now, number 3, a broker representing a buyer would bring their buyer to the table to buy the home. In doing this, that is when the listing broker gives them half of the commission. Now, if the listing broker also brings the buyer, now the listing broker marketed the home for sale and they sold the home, they get all 5%. Before, but usually the listing broker markets the home, they do a heck of a good job to market the home, and a different broker brings in the buyer and sells the home to that buyer. Because at the end of the day, as a seller, you can have the best marketing on earth, but if you don't have buyers, you're not selling your home. Ensuring that the buyer's agent is extremely important to bring that buyer in. I also want to be clear, number 4, commissions were never fixed at 4% or 6%. There was nothing ever that said you got to charge 4, you got to charge 5, you got to charge 6. I know brokers that charge 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. I know ones that charge 6, 7, 8%. I also know this, you get what you pay for often in life. And a lot of times those brokers doing it for a lower price, they have a lower level of service, maybe a lower level of competence. Not in all professions, not everybody's the same. And usually folks that are less competent or offer less service usually have a lower fee. And that's lawyers, that's doctors, that's CPAs. It's different going to HR block and paying $500 versus going to a professional CPA firm and paying $5,000. And number 5, this is something that I think is a huge misconception, even in my industry. Listing brokers don't sell homes. They market homes to sell them, but it is the buyer's broker that is selling them. And marketing is different than selling. Marketing a home, guys, is doing all you can to make that home shine. And that could be staging, that could be cleaning, that could be awesome photos, awesome video. That could be your real estate agent being intelligent enough to know the value of the property based on the land it sits on, based on the zoning, based on the opportunity. That's what your listing agent does. They market your home to make it look amazing, to attract as many bees to the honey as possible to get you the highest sales price. The person who sells your home is the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent is the person who convinces a human being to write an offer on your house. They're the ones selling the house. This is why sellers, I think as time goes on, they're going to realize, hey, if I want the house sold, you got to compensate people for their time and their expertise and their work. And these buyer's agents, they will still get compensated. So how is that going to work? Well, let's first talk about what happened in the last week. There were some attorneys in Missouri that contacted a group of sellers calling the plaintiffs. And they convinced the sellers that they were taken advantage of because the sellers paid their broker, the listing broker, and the buyer's broker to sell the home. The seller didn't really realize, though, that the listing broker was marketing the home and it was the buyer's broker job to sell the home. They didn't realize this because most human beings, myself included before I got in this industry, just didn't really realize what happens behind the doors, what goes on in the industry. So they convinced these sellers to partner and litigate against the National Association of Realtors. The attorneys won. And let's be very clear, just like there's ambulance chasers, there are law firms that go after class action suits and try to create smoke and mirrors even when there's none. Nonetheless, these lawyers, I guess they did a heck of a good job because they won a $418 million lawsuit. Now, roughly 30% of this will go to the plaintiff's attorneys. The remainder will go to a large pool of sellers. It looks like, and nothing's certain yet, but it's looking like each of these sellers in the class action lawsuit will receive around $12. $12, not even enough to go out to lunch. The attorneys who did the litigation will receive about a third of the winnings, so about 125 million or more. So you tell me, who was this lawsuit really about? I'm not going to answer that question. I'll leave it to everyone's imagination, but I will tell you, I would like to be the person walking away with 125 million, not the $12. So who is this lawsuit all about? But the lawsuit does stipulate two things shall happen now. Both of these, I think, are good. And the fallout of this lawsuit, I think I welcome some of these things. I think the system was really good as it was. It was cooperating, it benefited buyers, and it benefited sellers. And I could probably talk for 5 hours on that. But the two things that'll change is number one, cooperating commissions can no longer be advertised in the MLS. They can be advertised everywhere else, every other website in the world, phone calls, newsletters, emails, text messages, flyers, marketing material, brokers' websites, other websites. So sellers and sellers' agents can still offer incentive to buyers' agents to sell the seller's home. And that incentive can be advertised everywhere but the MLS. Ironically, it used to be advertised only on the MLS and nowhere else. So it's kind of like things flipped a little bit, which, all right. And number two, buyers working with a realtor must sign a buyer representation agreement. This stipulates what the buyer will pay, how it will be paid to that buyer. I think this is a great thing, and I think it's important for buyers to sign buyer rep agreements. So my last slide on this topic, how will commissions work in the future? Most likely, again, nothing is finalized yet. A lot of this is hypothetical, but might as well get ahead of it a bit. How will they work in the future? It is likely that sellers will still pay 2.5% to 3% to listing brokers to market their home. Could it be less? Could be 1%, could be 0.5%, could be 8%. Whatever the seller is willing to pay to listing brokers to market the home. It's also likely that they will still pay the buyer's broker for the buyer's broker to make the sale of the home happen. Could it be less than 2.5% to 3%? Yes. Could it be more? Yes. These are all going to be things that get negotiated. But number two, the commission being offered by sellers, as I mentioned already, can't be advertised on the MLS, but advertised everywhere else. Buyers will sign the buyer broker agreement, and this payment can either come from the buyer or more likely from the seller, because most buyers don't have money just sitting in the bank to pay a professional for professional service. They usually are going to use that towards their down payment. Commissions being paid out now will no longer be public record. I don't like that point. I think it's very important to make things as transparent as possible. And I almost think the way it used to be was a little bit more transparent, but we shall see. So how is this going to work in forms, guys? As a seller or buyer, the next time, well, not next time, after July, pending everything gets approved, you can see that commissions aren't going away. They're simply shifting from one form to another. And why do I say they're not going away? The only way commissions could fully go away is if we find a workforce willing to work for free. I don't know anyone willing to work for free And I certainly don't know any real estate agents working to free. But I do know that buying or selling a home is one of the largest, if not the largest, financial transaction a person makes in their life. And selling a home or buying a home without a real estate agent would be like, no pun intended, but like walking into a courtroom without a lawyer representing you. I have seen firsthand many times buyers and or sellers without real estate agent representation be taken advantage of in a legal way. I've seen sellers sell for too little, and I have seen buyers buy for too much or lose out on other opportunities by not working with a professional. So real estate agents are not going away. Commissions, I don't believe will go away. It looks like they're going to get shifted from one form to another. And here's that form, the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. It might modify a little bit between now and July, but the gist is, you can see circled in red on the left, buyer agrees to pay the broker as follows. Here it is, 2.5%. A buyer signs this when they start working with an agent. Then we go over here on the far right. This is lower down on the same page of this form, where it stipulates paragraph 4D3, authorization to include commission offer. The buyer authorizes the broker to include a term in the buyer's offer, obligating the seller to pay the broker directly or through escrow. So list sellers, instead of giving their agent 5%, and then that agent splitting it 2.5, 2.5, sellers might now start giving their agent 2.5. And then offers that come in when the home goes to market, most offers that come in, the seller's going to see are asking for a 2.5 to 3% credit to be paid to the buyer's agent. Well, the seller might say, I'm not going to pay that credit. And they don't have to, they're not obligated to. But the buyer is obligated to. And if the buyer can't pay that commission, the buyer might have to withdraw that offer then. And now the seller has less offers and potentially a lower sales price. Here's another form where this is already in the forms, guys. What you're looking at right now is a California residential purchase agreement. And you can see down here on paragraph 3G3, you got the normal things up here, top left, $1 million purchase price. This is a transaction we just did last week. $1 million purchase price, deposit, the loan amount, blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the bottom right here though. Bottom of the same page. Actually, it's page 2. Seller credit. Seller credits are nothing new. Sellers have been giving buyers credits since the beginning of time. Credits towards rate buy downs, as you can see in this one, interest rate buy down. Seller credit for improvements, bad foundation, bad roof. You've seen seller credits to help pay title and escrow fees. This is just going to be another seller credit to pay the buyer's broker. And here you see it in paragraph G3, 18 right here, paragraph 18, seller agrees to pay the obligation. A lot of times that's not being checked right now because of the way the system works. Don't be surprised if come this summer that starts getting checked. And then that offer would also come with this form, seller payment to buyer's broker, offering to pay the buyer's broker that fee that is stipulated in this initial form, the buyer rep agreement. The truth is, the majority of buyers will still work with buyer's agents. Why can I say that with confidence? Because last year, 10 years ago, since the beginning of time, today, buyers don't need to work with buyer's agents. They can go directly to the selling agent. They can go directly to the seller. Yet buyers still work with buyer's agents. When all the dust settles and buyers find out that they can still work with a buyer's agent, and either they can pay the buyer direct, or if they don't have the money, they can incorporate it into the offer, buyers will still work with buyer's agents, and sellers, probably 99 out of 100 times, are still going to pay the buyer's broker. Now, between you and me, there's a judge out there that might not agree, but between you and me, it's earned because the person selling your house is the buyer's agent. The person marketing your house is a seller's agent. And selling these complex real estate transaction takes these two people coming together to get your home sold. So there's lots of changes on the horizon potentially, but they are not as seismic as the headlines would make it sound. The only thing that would cause these commissions to just go away is if we can find a workforce of people willing to work for free. And that's just not going to happen. You deserve money for your work, your time, and your expertise. And real estate agents that are professional also deserve their time, work, and expertise. At the end of the day, I'll close it with this. Who you work with matters, especially in these shifting times. And if you're looking to buy or looking to sell real estate, and your goal is to work with one of the most professional teams in the nation, then I welcome working with you. The best way, again, to reach out to me is my email in the top right, patrick.kappel@compass.com. Or if you know or work with anyone on my team, feel free to reach out to them. And I also invite you to check out our other YouTube videos that have a ton of information on so many things about real estate. With that, let me get to some of these questions. What is the projected value of condos in UTC in 10 years? Boy, that's a very detailed question. The value of condos in UTC in 10 years. I don't know the exact value of the condos in UTC in 10 years. Predicting a number is, no one can do that exactly, but I can do this. I can tell you that over the last 50 years, San Diego real estate values as a whole have appreciated 6% year over year over year on average. Some years more, some years less, but the average over half a century is 6%. So if you own real estate in San Diego and you pull out a financial calculator, let me know if you don't know how to use one of those, I'll teach you. Pull out a financial calculator and put in the value of your property today and calculate 6% annual increases in value. Where is it going to be in 10 years? That's very likely where your value will be. Not certainly, but very likely. If you ask me, it might even be higher because although we have historically increased 6% year over the last 50 years, that's based on 50 years of no biotech development in the last 50 years. We certainly didn't have a housing crisis and shortage like we do now in the last 50 years. So if you ask me, real estate values could very likely appreciate more in the next 50 years and next 10 than they did in the last 50. Another question is asking, when is the best time to refinance, or should one refinance if current 30-year mortgage rate is at 6.125? Is it worth it if property purchased 1.1 to 2 years ago? If you got a 6.1% interest rate, probably not a good time to refinance right now because most interest rates are higher than 6.1. I would refinance once rates go below that. And then when they go down again, refinance again, perhaps. But if you're at 6.1 right now, it might not make sense to refinance until rates are maybe in the high to mid fives. This question was asked by an anonymous person, so I don't know who you are. If you're one of my clients, reach out to me, and I'll introduce you to a lender that can give you a better accurate answer because that's more of a lender question than a real estate question or a real estate agent. But I will tell you, almost all of my real estate, I have refinanced many times, and I always do cash out refinances. I'm about to say something that a lot of people would disagree with. But I'm going to tell you, everyone who disagrees with me on this probably doesn't know as much about finance and real estate as I do. I refinance my property as much as I can, as long as the rate's not going up. And I always do cash out refinances, and I pull out as much cash as possible. My goal is to never, ever pay off my mortgage and to die with as much real estate debt as possible. Why is that my goal? Because if I can borrow money at 5%, I'm smart enough, and I know you're smart enough to reinvest it and get a higher than 5% return. My gosh, you can get 5.5% return on government treasuries right now, which are really risk-free. So if you spend 2 master's degrees worth of studying finance, you'll realize that a mortgage is something you should try to never pay off. But don't tell my mom that, she disagrees with me. Let my mom know. Another question is, what's my opinion on REITs? REITs, real estate investment trusts, for those of you who don't know, you can invest in real estate on your own, which is what I do, or you can invest in syndications, a little bit trickier, or you can invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts. You put your money into, call it the stock market, but it's not the stock market, it's REITs. Real estate investment trusts are collections of a lot of buildings that Wall Street buys and sells, and you can buy shares of those buildings. What's my opinion of REITs is the question. I have $0 invested in REITs. I hope that answers your question. All of my money, I invest in three things. San Diego real estate, which is the number one thing I invest in. And I have learned firsthand it'll make you wealthier than just about anything else. San Diego real estate that me, myself, and I own, along with my wife. Not syndications, not REITs, San Diego real estate. Makes you wealthy. Number two, anything I invest that's more liquid, S&P 500 index, S&P 500 index, ETFs and mutual funds. And the third thing is short-term treasuries. I really don't invest in anything else. Would it be wise to buy a rental property or condo while having a current mortgage? Heck yeah, it would. Someone's asking, would it be wise to invest in a rental property like a condo while having a current mortgage? I have 8 mortgages and I will buy more real estate. I bought a condo, had a mortgage, and then I bought another condo, and then I bought a house, and then I bought a duplex, and then I bought another duplex, and I had all those mortgages. Keep those mortgages rolling. Having mortgages makes you money. And it probably would take 5 hours to teach someone why I just said what I said, but having mortgages makes you money. It's called using leverage. Let me be very honest here. The bottom, I'm going to categorize people in America, and it doesn't mean to come off as offensive, but educational. The bottom 90% of America in the top 10% when it comes to wealth. The bottom 90% of America calls debt debt, and they think all debt is the same and it's bad. The top 10% of America puts debt into 2 categories. Debt, which is like car loans, credit card loans, and leverage, which is money you borrow to invest in an asset that goes up in value. You build wealth with leverage. You go broke with debt. I have never had a credit card payment in my life. I have credit cards, but I pay it off every month. I've never had a car loan in my life. I've never had a student loan in my life because I joined the Navy. GI Bill, thank you. But I have had millions of dollars in real estate debt. And I don't call real estate debt debt by itself. It is leverage, because it is leverage using OPM, other people's money, that makes you wealthy. So to your question, is it wise to buy rental property while you have a current mortgage? Heck yeah, it's wise. Go buy as much rental property as possible. Another person asked, what's the pros and cons of being on an HOA board? Whew. I can think of one pro, you get a little bit of control. I can think of a lot of cons, and they all deal with taking up your time, being headaches, being with disgruntled people. I own a few condo units. I don't join HOA boards. There's other boards you can join. But if you live in that HOA and you're a resident, maybe join it. But again, if you work with me or one of my team members, reach out with that question. I could go on all day about HOA boards. Any other questions? I saw a few hands get raised, but I didn't see the question pop up in the Q&A. No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining tonight. I think sometime in the coming months, as we get closer to July, I'll do a full-on webinar on the changes coming within the industry that buyer and seller consumers should be aware of. But the bottom line, I think, is this, and we'll find out more in the coming months, is not much is changing. Buyers are still going to want to work with professional help. Sellers are going to want to work with professional help. And professional help has to get compensated for their time and their expertise. I think what will change is the forms that commissions are put on, how commissions are discussed, and where they are advertised. Other than that, I don't think there's seismic shifts coming. Real estate values are going up, not down. Even if you got rid of every real estate agent on earth, real estate prices would go up. In fact, they'd probably go up even faster, because if you got rid of real estate agents, the velocity of transactions would slow down. It would become much harder to buy or sell a house. So thank an agent. They're the ones who try to make it as easy as possible for you. And with that, I'll sign off, and I look forward to seeing you all at a future webinar. Have a good evening.